welcome to Arizona Laughs and Listings, the podcast where fun and funny folks get together and talk about real estate and comedy, two completely unrelated topics that go surprisingly well together. I'm your host, Kristen Levanway, a real estate agent here in the Phoenix metro area for 19 years, as well as a local stand-up comedian. My guest today is the one and only Liz Frisius, who retired from the military and took the Phoenix comedy scene by storm. And oh, by the way, she's owned more houses than she can count. After some audio challenges, we're finally on our podcast, and I'm so excited to be chatting with Liz Frisius today, one of my friends and heroes in the Phoenix comedy scene. Liz, good morning.
Good morning. How you doing, Kristen?
I'm doing much better now. I have no idea what happened, but I'm glad we resolved it. So thank you so much for being on my podcast. It's a new project and it's been super fun. And I'm just really excited to hear what you've got to say. So,
Well, it is a beautiful day here in Phoenix, Arizona. And like I said, really appreciate the opportunity to be on the podcast with you.
Oh, yeah, we're going to have some fun. So I'd like to start off with you just telling a little bit about yourself. What, it could be comedy, could be not comedy. Tell us a little bit about Liz Frisius. People might not know.
Well, I grew up in the Navy. I trained with the Army. I spent 29 years Air Force. And when I retired from the Air Force, I turned around and walked onto the stand-up comedy stage. I've been there ever since. And I'm also a voice actor. So welcome to True Grit Tone Studios here in lovely downtown Phoenix.
I love your studio. That studio is awesome. What kind of voice acting?
A little bit of everything. I do commercial, I do narration, I do, of all things at the moment, political ads. Never figured my voice would be good for that, but apparently politicians like the way this sounds.
You have kind of a mellow voice. It's kind of a soothing, but a little bit energy on the back end voice. So I can see why you'd be good in commercials.
Well, that and I usually get stereotyped in the video games as the tough female warrior. So if you've ever heard my voice shouting something on a battlefield, that on a video game, that might be me.
Oh, really? Okay, good to know. So you're just a celebrity amongst those gamers then, huh?
Well, I don't think I have a following because, as was pointed out, part of the job of being a voice actor is to have your impact felt, not necessarily to be individually recognized.
Oh, okay. So just kind of blend in with the game. I don't know. It sounds very cool. You're the only voice actor that I know, so it's good to know. Let's move into the meat of this podcast, and I like to ask people about their firsts. So the thing about this podcast is it's two very unrelated topics that pair amazingly well. I think people are very much have very fond memories of their very first house, and maybe fond or maybe they were terrified, I don't know, of their very first comedy show. So let's hear about your first.
Being a Navy brat and then being in the Air Force, the first place I ever lived was an apartment off down in Solana Beach in California.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then first house I remember living in was up in Washington State, Oak Harbor, Washington. The first house that my husband and I ever bought was in Little Rock, Arkansas. So a little bit of all over the place. And then the first comedy show I ever did was Nashville, Tennessee. After I retired, I was the ROTC commander at Tennessee State University, also their professor of aerospace studies. And I retired from that and turned around and walked onto the comedy stage at Cobra's in downtown Nashville.
Oh, wow. So let's go back to your first house a little bit. So it was in Arkansas, and it was your very first house. So tell us a little bit about it. Was it large? Was it new? Did it need a lot of work?
It was on a cul-de-sac, which was a little strange. Whenever you're looking for a place, especially when you're military, you've got a very constrained timeline. You've got a couple days to find a place to live and get yourself completely moved, usually from one side of the country to the other.
Wow.
It could be a short move. In this case, we were moving from Texas. My husband and I both were active duty military. And so we kind of got slingshotted across the Air Force. One would move, the other would catch up, then that one would move, the other one would catch up.
Oh,
So
right.
sometimes it's learning to trust your spouse on what they're seeing in a house.
They're just like, "Hey, I found a house. I think it'll work. I'm putting in an offer. Hope you like it."
Actually, we had a real estate agent in Belleville, Illinois, who absolutely panicked because by then my husband and I had moved, I think, 17 times together. And he walked in, she was showing him one place. He walks in, takes one look, and says, "Okay, yeah, this is the one, we'll put an offer." And she looks at him and says, "Don't you want to talk to your wife about it? Maybe let her." He says, "I know my wife. I know she'll like this one." She actually insisted I come see it before he could put the bid on it.
You would think after 17 times, you're like, "Yeah, we probably aren't this probably won't be our last house. Like, I think it'll be fine." Right?
Well, for the real estate agents, granted, it was pretty much a military community. But if you're not a member of the military, the surprise of, most real estate agents are thinking, hey, this is a family event, families coming together. This is where their life is going to be built in this home. And so the shock of having someone go in and go, literally 5 seconds in and going, yeah, this is the one, we're putting an offer. That is such a different culture.
Yeah, or maybe she just hadn't been in it long enough. I've been in it 19 years. I've seen everything. I really have. Like nothing phases me anymore. So, well, of course now we have video too. So, it's not like it's completely sight unseen. You can usually get a good video of a house before you get it, but much more exciting to do it that way where you just are like, "Oh, okay." But it is a good point. Houses mean different things to different people. And when you move a lot, a house is just, hey, where we're going to be for a while. Maybe it's a good investment too, or maybe not, because you're not going to be there very long. You just maybe want to break even when you get out of there. But for other people, they buy one or two houses in their whole life, and that's it. So it's a good point. It means different things to different people.
Now you brought up the videos. What have you seen in 19 years? What have you seen that's changed as far as real estate? Because obviously videos now, especially for the military families or families that have to move a lot, that's huge.
Yeah, so it's much easier now to deal with all of the paperwork because you don't have to sit down and get a pen out. You can do it with DocuSign, electronic. People use mobile notaries more. So if you like, if you are in two different states, we could still get you signed and get all the paperwork back to title to get it closed. So a lot of the technology has helped, in that regard. The videos, I for most of my buyers, I go and video all the homes, even if they're here local. I just think it's really helpful. It's better for me to go out and look at a bunch of houses that gonna work versus them wasting their time. So those are things that I think have helped a lot. And then just there's a lot more information available online. So for better or worse, sometimes it's good for people to have more information and sometimes not. So, it just depends. But I think it is helpful, some of these
Well,
technological advances.
you bring up a good point with that DocuSign. One of the things you find, it's different. Whatever state you're moving to, it is a different home buying experience.
It's true. It's very true. We have different systems for recording our deeds. And so right there, that will dictate if you're working with an attorney or if you're working with a realtor. It's a bit different ball game. And then the speed at which
Oh,
these things are
yes.
done. In Arizona, we're like, let's get her done. you know, 30 days, why not 21? But I've done some deals where my clients were selling a house somewhere else or buying a house somewhere else. And it's like, well, maybe we'll get it done in a couple weeks. It's like really lackadaisical. So it's hard for us to understand here in Arizona.
Well, New Jersey, I think, was probably the worst home buying experience. It was an attorney, it was the real estate agent, it was my husband and I, 7 original hand signed copies, each document over 40 pages long. And literally,
Whoa.
they sat down with a stack of ink pens, lined us all up in a table, and the real estate agent was, okay, everyone sign here, here, and here. Shift your copy down. Next person, just sign here, here, and here. Shift your copy down.
Oh
It
my
was a
gosh.
nightmare.
And you had to make 7 copies?
7
Oh, wow.
originals.
That's
7
that's
originals
old
over
school.
40 pages.
That is
Well,
old school.
we joke that New Jersey is a police state. It's like, I don't want to stay here. I don't want to live here after
That's
this.
just a sign, right?
Any state where you're not allowed to pump your own gas.
I don't know, there's some states where both parties sit down together. Sometimes that's okay, sometimes not. I've had clients that were almost ready to go to blows, and you're like, "No, no, we're not gonna, you guys are go separate corners, like, you don't need to."
In this corner with an ink
Exactly.
pen. And in this
Exactly.
corner.
Oh my gosh. It gets heated. I mean, it can be emotional for people. So, okay, let's go to your first comedy show now. So, you just randomly thought, hey, I'm a funny person. I want to tell some jokes. What made you go up on that stage?
Actually, my parents were much older. My husband and I are the same age. My parents are 10 years older than his. So I grew up with the old vaudevillians. I grew up with Burns and Allen. I grew up with Marx Brothers. I grew up with the Keystone Cops, Harold Lloyd. Those are who I was familiar with. When my husband and I
Oh,
dated, we were always going to the comedy shows. We were at the Air Force Academy. We'd go to a comedy show on the weekends. And we'd been going to comedy shows for our entire marriage. And so one night I'm working at the Pentagon, get home. He says, hey, I've got tickets to this improv show up at Comedy Stop in Annandale. Okay, fantastic. Like most improv shows, they say, listen, we'll ask audience input. We don't drag people on stage. That's not what we do. Well, the
oh,
smart mouth part, the smart aleck streak of my personality showed up.
you, Liz? You?
It's not so. But yeah, they brought up the first question they asked was favorite food. I entered service from New Mexico. I answered rattlesnake.
Okay.
Second question they asked was name an activity. I said underwater basket weaving. And yes, that is tougher than it looks. I used to scuba dive, and so I know that is far more difficult than people think.
For clarity, did
And
not make that up. Actual experience underwater basket weaving. You
when
don't see
somebody
that on a
asks
lot
you,
of resumes, that's for sure.
when someone asks you, name something around the house that needs to be fixed, and your response is the cat, 10 minutes of that, they dragged me on stage
Yeah.
and kept me on stage for the rest of the show.
Wow.
They created a monster that day.
So you were hooked. Sometimes that's what happened with me. It was one time, and I was like, I love this so much. So
Well,
yeah.
I went to one open mic. I was still active duty at the time. I went to one open mic at Politics and Prose in Washington, D.C., and realized that I better table stand up comedy until I was retired.
Oh yeah.
I figured I'd get
Yeah.
myself court martialed before I was done.
Yeah. I would guess that military and comedy does not pair as well as real estate and comedy. Guessing.
Well, it can, depending, but obviously there's certain topics that the military, there's certain things we are not allowed to say, and it's part of the regulations. It's part of what you do when you serve, and there's a reason for it. The military is expected to be apolitical. A lot of times you'll see one political party trying to claim the military supports the other political party. Uh-uh. My generation of military, especially, we were raised with what was called the Marshall School of Thought, the George C. Marshall School of Thought. And that was the military is apolitical. Your job is to serve. It is not, you are not there to make your political opinions known. And that changed probably in 1996,
Yeah. I
where
think
all
the
of a
whole
sudden
political climate changed around then. It seemed like it was the beginning of where we are now. Not to go down that path because we want this to be lighthearted, but I feel
yeah,
like what
it,
you're saying rings true not just in the military but in general. Things changed around then.
well,
Seems.
you and I've talked before. We're same generation, and when you and I were kids, it was the three things you don't talk about in public.
Right.
You don't talk sex, religion, or politics. That was
Exactly.
just polite. You
It
didn't bring
is.
those up because you were going to divide people. The point of conversation was to bring people together.
Yeah.
And so to see that change, the younger generation is shocked when I tell them, it's like, yeah, we were raised, you don't talk sex, religion, or politics. What's the primary conversation we see nowadays? Sex, religion, and
I
politics.
know. And there's so many other things. So,
Yeah, there's so much more to life. And so it's one where, I figured, okay, I love comedy. And so I set it on the back burner. And no kidding, I was in the Pentagon and they sent us to training. This is true. They do send us to training to teach us how to be civilians.
oh.
And yes, I did go to remedial training. I make a lousy civilian.
Uh-huh.
But in the Pentagon, the first time I took the class, I was in the Pentagon and they said, well, what are you going to be when you grow up? And one of our guys said, oh, I fly F-18s. I'm going to continue to fly when I'm a civilian. One guy said, oh, I do IT. I'm going to work computers when I get out. They got to me. I said, I'm a military intelligence officer and I'm going to be a stand-up comic.
Oh, yeah.
To this day, the single biggest scream of laughter I've ever gotten was in the Pentagon saying that I was going to be a stand-up comic.
Oh, oh man, no faith, no faith.
The second class I took, the one of the colonels pulled me aside. He says, usually creativity gets socially normed out of military personnel when you're in for as long as I've been in. He says, everybody else here is doing the same thing they did pretty much when they were in, whether it's firefighter or pilot or, computers. He says, you didn't. He says, how did that happen?
It was your destiny. It was. And I'm glad that it ended up that way because I think you've had a big impact in Phoenix comedy. And it's nice. The thing about the comedy scene, and I'm sure this is true no matter where you are, is there's all different walks of life that participate in comedy. And so these different perspectives I find very interesting. And yours is super unique. Let's be honest. It really is. And it just, I don't know, it's just cool that you can bring that to the table.
It's all about the vest. It's all about the
Yes.
vest.
Notice that you're wearing your vest. That's awesome. I mean, I'm assuming you don't always wear a vest every day wherever you go.
Most days I actually do.
Yeah.
The only time you probably won't see me in a vest is when I'm down at the garden. I am a rose gardener for down in downtown Phoenix,
Mhm.
and so that's. Although yes, I actually was wearing my vest yesterday out there, but yeah, typically I do wear a vest quite often. It's not a stage prop. I do know a lot of comics use a vest or a hat as stage props. This is the way I dress.
Yeah.
So my sense of style is dubious at best.
It's your unique signature style, and I think you rock it very well.
Hey, whoever you are, whatever you look like, own it, be proud of it, because there's no one else who brings you to the world.
Be the best you can be. All right, we're going to move on to our favorite rooms. Not my favorite room, your favorite rooms. So this is your favorite room in your house and your favorite room to perform in.
Oh, favorite room in the house. Uh, that's a tough one because I love where my husband and I are at the moment. It really is. In the morning, I love being in the studio. The Obviously, soundproofing and all the rest. This has just been a great place to work. Uh, in the evenings, you know, sitting down in a couple of chairs with my husband and just sitting there talking over what's going on for the day. At that point in time, that's my favorite room.
Oh, yeah. Now tell us about your soundproof room. It's obviously, I'm assuming when you bought the house, it did not come with a soundproof room.
No, no, they're actually in Nashville, Tennessee. That was one of the big surprises in Nashville was there are professional music studios built
Oh,
into
yeah.
houses. It's a selling point. So when you're going to a city, when you're looking at, okay, what is it I'm going to do? You might be surprised to find some very interesting things in houses that there's no other place that I've ever moved where a music studio, a full up music studio, floating floors, all the bells and whistles, the extra outlets, the soundproofing, the one place I was so shocked because somebody had actually installed a guitar humidor,
Wow.
which my husband's a guitarist, but both of us are looking at that going, wow,
That's next level.
way more than what we need.
That's next level. I've heard of it in LA. I've heard of it in LA that people will have studios in their homes as well, but it's very nichey for sure.
Well, COVID changed a lot of that for the voice community. With voice acting, what we found was people couldn't go into the studios, and
Oh,
so it became how do you do home recording? How do you how do you start up this? How do you keep your profession going? How do you keep your craft going when you physically can't make contact? And so a lot of us did home installations, and now we can record and edit. Uh, right at home. There's also Source Connect. So a lot of this stuff got outsourced. I
yeah.
still, for doing demos, I still go into a full up studio.
Mm.
For my last demo, I actually went all the way out to Burbank.
Oh, wow.
And that's when you're going, okay, I know the clientele I'm looking at for this. I want background music put with it. I I want the subject matter expert.
Yeah.
This is not just an audition where I'm going, okay, here's the voice on a nice clean take. I want the background music. It's a tech level that it's way beyond me.
Right. A little higher production quality or production level would be probably
It's an art
necessity
form
for
unto
something.
itself. Yeah,
Yeah, we
it's
can
an
only
it's a
do so much, but there's people who that's their whole livelihood. So obviously they're going to be able to put all that, the bells and whistles in there for you.
plus when you have a director who's standing there saying, "Okay, I need you to emphasize this. I need you to really get the emotion of this one." When you've got the director right there going, "Okay, we need another take." Okay, let's do this till we've got this not just right, but just nailed.
How did you get into voice acting?
Well, when I first got out of the military, as I've told you, I make a terrible civilian, and I really struggled existing. I'm used to not being noticed. Being my job in the military as an intelligence officer, you're not supposed to be noticeable. And so I've kind of been used to living my life quietly, staying out of the public eye, being as unobtrusive as possible. And so it's one of the reasons why I became a comic. How do you exist in the public eye when you're not used to being in public? And so voiceover became a very great uh, job to have, where all of a sudden it's like, okay, I don't need to be physically seen. People can still get the effect of the work I'm doing, but they don't have to see me. And so it was a nice occupation to have, and it still is a great occupation to have. Um, just changing from not being seen to being in comedy, you're seen.
Oh, yeah. You're seen from a vulnerable position that most people do not experience. So you're seen inside and out often when you're on the comedy stage. So that's a good transition though to go just it's just my voice. It's just my voice. So that's it though.
You don't need to see this. You just need to hear the voice and get whatever it is that I'm trying to convey.
Exactly. All right. So favorite rooms in your house. It sounds like your favorite rooms in your house are more related to what you're doing than your surroundings. So that's neat that your house accommodates both of those things. What about your favorite rooms to perform in?
Oh, my absolute all-time favorite room unfortunately no longer exists, and that would have been El Charro Hipster.
Oh yeah.
I adored El Charro Hipster. It was, that wonderful it's a mom, dad, and daughter running the business. It's great food. It was the night of 72 comics. They taped off 12 feet from the stage. We had 10 comics in from LA, including 3 nationally touring headliners.
Wow.
We had a comic from Maine. They stayed open till 2 in the morning. Everybody's outside. You got the 12 feet to the stage, somebody's on stage, but they did that. They were actually the reason why the comedy scene in Phoenix thrived as well as it did. Uh, we were one of the first places that people could perform, and I think I joked with the family at El Charro Hipsters with Peraltas. I joked with them regularly that they accidentally became the biggest comedy club in all of Arizona, and they may have been, I can't confirm this, they may have been the biggest comedy club in the western half of the United States.
Wow. That's funny. I've been
But
there a few times and it's not what you would expect for a comedy club,
it's,
but it's, it's the vibe. and the support from the owners, the ownership for sure. It was very sad
Right.
that that went down. Another small
Yeah.
business struck down by, we won't even go there, but you know.
Well, it's one of the things where what I treasure about that time frame, and a lot of comics didn't realize this. Um, they actually, during COVID, when they weren't sure if they were going to financially survive, they still were providing free meals to artists, comics, and musicians who couldn't afford to eat. And
Wow.
they did not, you know, that wasn't that wasn't trumpeted any place, but they knew the comics personally. They
Yeah.
knew the ones that were struggling, and they made sure that they had a healthy meal. And I look at that and go, that's the heart and soul you want in Phoenix. They were heart and soul of stand-up comedy forever and a day, and I still am hoping that they do bring back El Charro Hipster too. I don't know if that's in the works. They were talking about it, but if they are going to bring it back, um, I need to touch base and see if that's
That would be
still possible.
amazing. Yeah. Is the space still available, or would they have to move somewhere else?
No, I'm talking with Francisco. He said that being in that circumstance again, where you've got a out of state landlord who doesn't understand the community, who doesn't understand that this is reinvestment in the art district in Phoenix. And so, there's always conflicting interests. It happens. It's lousy when it happens like that. But he said that if he ever was going to bring it back again, he wanted to do a standalone business that he owned, because then you don't have the question about, okay, has the landlord now has has a business landlord, which is very different from a home landlord, but has that business landlord changed what they want to do with the property when you're one of the tenants there, and your business, your livelihood, everything else is built on that.
It's
So
tough.
I still am hoping to hear that they're going to bring it back, because that will be the fiesta of the
Yes.
century if they come back.
Yes. We were talking last night, my little Jared's coffee, tea, and gallery. We were reflecting. We've got the two mics every week, two comedy shows, just at Jared's, and then at Nile, James Wonder Barnett's been running shows there. There's another show that I've seen once there, and then the neighborhood comedy theater. And we were just
Yep.
commenting, that's like the most densely populated comedy venue street that there is. We're like, we need to embrace that and get that going, and maybe, develop some more comedy, because yeah, having a supportive place where artists can go and work on their craft, I think it's really it's impactful more than people realize. Not just for the people, but for any audience members, anybody that comes and gets to experience that. And it's, it's not all about Netflix specials and arena shows and all that kind of stuff. The local talent, whether it's art, comedians, musicians, I think it's magical. So little places like that
Well,
need to be supported.
we've got the long laugh line going here in Phoenix. I mean, when you look at it, you've got you've got Michael Longfellow now on Saturday Night Live. He's a Phoenix comic.
Right?
You've got Mary Upchurch and Ray Earl, who've gone to Las Vegas and are
Yeah.
just making strides in comedy. You've
Uh-huh.
got Celia Contreras, who's over in Austin now, and
Right.
they all came out of the creative pool that is Phoenix. And you
Yes.
look at our connection to the local businesses. People had a long day; they need something to laugh at.
Exactly. Yeah. It's awesome. All right. Let's talk about real estate for a little bit. People right now are the real estate market is in Phoenix anyway. It's pretty stable, and I think that's surprising to a lot of people. The interest rates going up. People are thinking, I'll never be able to afford a house. People are convinced that the home prices are going to crash. And basically, when I look at stats, that's not what I see. But I'm just curious what you're seeing and feeling and hearing out there in real estate land.
Well, it's like I said, it's always a little strange having the military background on it. Working at the park, obviously, I see. I know a lot of the out of doors population,
Hmm.
especially in that area. I know them by name. and talking with them and going, okay, what are your thoughts on this? In some cases, it's not an easy question. One of the gentlemen that I see on a daily basis, he actually helps me look after the garden. He physically does not want to live indoors. He's had an
Mm-hmm.
apartment twice. For him, out of doors living, that's who he is, heart and soul. That is his choice. He is very proud of it. So it's not, when people say, oh, there's not enough housing. Well, a lot of times there is. Now, the question is, where are people looking? You know, we don't know the circumstance going on behind a lot of people. There's different circumstances all over. Are you living in an extended family situation? Are you living in an apartment situation? Are you renting? Are you buying? It's all different, and it's the give and take. Where is the job? Do you want to be close to your job?
Right.
In my case, I don't mind driving. I grew up all over the nation. If you've got to drive 5 hours, you drive 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, in my husband's case, he grew up in New England. Anything more than a 7-minute drive is a trek. I was so surprised the first time I drove in New England. I went up there and it's my first time driving. And I was confused because in New England, at least in the area I was at, all the towns ran together. I was through 4 towns and didn't, for me, I'm looking at it going, wow, I didn't realize this town was so big. Well, no, I was through 4 towns.
Because there are a lot of little small towns, right? They're like little hamlets or something.
So, it's one of what are people looking to do? And one of the challenges that I've seen, and this used to drive me batty. Uh, I was in Washington, D.C. We were working with a real estate agent, and we told the gentleman, because I was there on that real short timeline, I've got 3 days. That's it. I said, okay, here's the non negotiables. I said, I want sanity in the kitchen so it's not a safety hazard. What does that mean for me? That means here's the sink, here's the stove. I'm not having to turn 180 degrees around to take a pan of boiling water and turn 180 degrees around and risk tripping over someone or something.
Which is worth mentioning in those older areas. We're used to Phoenix where houses look pretty normal. Maybe the old houses are from the 50s, but some of those houses they're built like in the early 1900s or the 1800s. You're like, I don't get it. So that's something you might have to say, I want something that's maybe like modern and functional.
I told him that. I said, and the cost, here is the budget. Do not ask to increase the budget. This is the budget. And then for the next 7 hours, the guy was doing that. Well, can we massage this number? Can we raise this number? Can we work with this number? Can we? 7 hours of that. And
Yeah. Out.
we
Yeah.
fired him as a real estate
Get out of
agent.
here, you. Yeah.
That was, I got done. I called my husband. I said, he would not quit. I said, every single time. And kept saying, oh, well, I don't think you're going to find what you're looking for.
Mm.
And between that and can we massage the number? Can we increase the number? Can we adjust the number? Can we raise the number? It's like, are you a thesaurus? No,
Right.
stay
Every
within the
possible.
budget.
No. Well, so, did you find what you were looking for within your budget?
Yeah, I
So
drove
there's
around that night. I drove around that night, found 3 places, called the real estate agent because my husband called up the guy. I said, I can fire him on my own if you'd like. And he says, no, I'll take care of it. He figured that was probably a good call. My husband is much more diplomatic.
Oh.
But he calls up the real estate agent and said, listen, this is just not working for us. So thank you so much for your time, but we're done. I've found 3 places, all within our budget, all described as what we were looking for. Called the real estate agent, sitting out in front of one of them, and there had been a bid put on that one. He showed us 2 more. He says, and by the way, there's this other one I think is exactly what you're looking for. We drove out the next day. He showed it to us. Guess what? We bought the place he recommended.
Yeah. How hard was that?
It was under our budget. And it had exactly what we were looking for. And you just go, this is not rocket science. For the best real estate agents, they're the ones who listen. For the worst real estate agents, they know what they want and they're going to.
Exactly. It sounds like you saw both extremes on that house shopping trip. And so what about your house buying experience here?
It was a big surprise, mainly because we were doing a VA loan for the house, and we looked at a few places. We had a the home we bought is we're the second owners.
Oh, that's
We're the
nice.
second owners, but the first people to live in the house.
Oh,
The
wow.
It had been sitting empty 6 months. The previous owner had it built, and then he got reassigned with his job. He got sent to Seattle, and so he had the house built. He was the first owner of it. It sat empty for 6 months. My husband and I were both surprised. It's like, wait a minute, nobody's bought this place. So we bought it, and then found out from the VA loan, and this is where find out that our real estate agent wasn't familiar with VA loans. The
Oh,
issue became because it was new construction, nobody had lived in the house. Yes, we were the second owners, but nobody lived here. We no longer could use a VA loan for that.
wow.
So we had to go back and shift what type of loan we were doing.
Oh, that's a bummer because that VA loan is such a great benefit. It's the best loan. I mean, it's a good deal.
But it was one of those where, you look at it and go, okay, well, let's work through this. It's like anything else, it's as stressful or unstressful as you want it to be sometimes.
Mhm.
And the fact that, our real estate agent was so honest when he came back and said, guys, I screwed this up. I didn't realize that not having someone live there, we were both, it's like, hey, we didn't realize we're the second owners. This shouldn't be an issue. They're like, yeah, but nobody's lived there.
Definitely an unusual situation,
Very much.
but it worked out for you,
It definitely worked out.
so that's good. Would you say that over how many houses do you think you've owned?
Oh my gosh. Over the years, the buying and selling, I've lost track.
Oh my
I
gosh.
have, I have completely lost track. I think the weirdest one, because obviously 2006, everybody talks about real estate market going under. And so because of that, we ended up renting out that home because both of us got orders. We had to move, but the market's upside down. You gotta survive that. So we rented that out. Well, we'd been assigned away from there and then to a different location and then got sent back to Washington, D.C.
Oh,
And so the issue was we had tenants in the house, we had the military clause, but my husband and I were both looking at it going, we've had to move often enough. The family's got kids, the family's
oh,
stable there, the kids are in school there. Well, we have the right in the military clause that says we can tell our tenants you need to move out in the next 30 days. And I just looked at each other and went,
yeah,
no, leave them there. They're stable. We actually rented a place, even though we owned a home
yeah.
nearby. So we rented for that assignment. It's like, nah, it's just, you look at it and go, okay, what's in the best interest of everybody here? This is a temporary assignment for us.
Oh,
This
yeah.
is so, they stayed until the family got their own assignment to another location.
Oh, they were a military family as well?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember because that was 2000. God, I'm forgetting what year that was.
Yeah,
That's the problem with 29 years of service, and you sit here and go, okay, it
I
was three
know.
times in Washington D.C. Which time was that?
I
So,
think it's a
it,
common I was just with my son and his girlfriend yesterday, and we were trying to remember dates from, the last 5, 7 years or something like that. Like, when did that happen? And it's because it's you know what? Time flies when you're having fun, and it just all kind of blends together. It means you're having a good life, I think.
I love the comment. I forget who it was that made it. That being at home, it's like having a blanket that you just can pull around your shoulders, kick off your shoes, sit back and relax. Your home is your haven from the world, from all the insanity. And so to have it set up where, it's safely set up, it's functional, and then you can let your personality come out and just enjoy it.
Right. Yeah, you can just let your hair down, especially in a soundproof room.
Actually, the funny thing about this, and I had a good laugh because one of my voice coaches, back when I was going through the orientation and the training for it. And he always laughed. He says, of all the characters that a voice actor can do, he says, so help me, he says, if anybody is ever casting for the Baroness out of G.I. Joe, he says, I'm calling you.
Oh, wow.
The colors of my studio here, the soundproofing in the studio, are actually in the colors of the Baroness's costume.
Oh, boy. Is that a good news or a bad news that you're being typecast by this character?
Well, I always have a little bit of a laugh when it comes to characters, because in the case of, I've played everything from a scared older woman in a hazardous neighborhood to oh my gosh, the comic book character or the video game character on the battlefield, to a political ad, to, you look at the various ranges that you can do. It's always fun to see the range that you can get as a voice actor compared to, okay, I do Dinner Detective. I love it. It's a lot of fun. But guess who got typecast as the murderess?
Oh, is that you? You're usually the murderess?
Well, now I'm actually, I do the host. I'm now a detective and a host as well. But when I started out, and I can understand it because physically, when I'm wearing my boots, I'm standing over 5'10".
Yeah.
Depending on the height of the heels of my boots, I'm either 5'10" or 6'2". And here I am, that large of a female, and they're going, "We have a female murderess."
Yeah.
And you're convincing. So, I played the murderess so many times the first year I did Dinner Detective, and it was so much fun. But
Oh.
it's nice having the greater range now in voice acting, where you can go, okay, one day I'm a comic book character, the next day I'm a video game character, then I turn around and I'm doing a political voiceover. And sometimes we had one that was called in, I didn't get this one, but it was for a message for a 50th anniversary. It was the voiceover for a 50th anniversary video.
So a nice, sweet, loving voice. You missed out on that one, huh?
Well, it's one where, as I've told a couple, I've put in, I was applying for one of the ads, and I posted it for my fellow voice actors out of Tim Power's Mic Droppers. And one lady says, "Wait a minute, you're perfect for this role. Aren't you auditioning for it?" I said, "Well, yes, but if I'm not who they're looking for, let me help them find the right voice. Let me help them find the voice that they have, that they're looking for." And in Tim Power's Mic Droppers, that is never a bad thing. We refer each other, and it really is help the client find what best suits them, help them have a positive experience. My suspicion is, for you being 19 years in real estate, obviously successful real estate agent, the helping your client find what works best for them.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not about me. It's about them. Unlike your price obsessed real estate agent. That one guy. Yeah. That's really, I don't know. That's not the best way, I think, to serve the client's needs. But whatever you want to do, whatever you want to base your business on, I guess. But that's not how I
Well,
operate.
the best real estate agents I ever had were just the voice of reason. They knew good contractors to call if you had to, when we went to sell a house, if you had to have repair work done, they had key points of contact. They had the network. They knew an honest assessment of, here's what I think would be a good selling price. Here's what's a good asking price. They know the market. And when they're bringing in clients to view a home, or in the case of, we're buying one and they're looking to sell the home, knowing and listening to that client, the best real estate agents I ever had, it was so seamless. They were so gracious and just fun to work with.
Yeah, it can make a big difference in the experience and the success of the transaction if you have a good agent. And then of course if you don't, if you have the bad one, then it can really make it difficult, and it can end up costing you a lot of money too, if you can end up in a really bad spot. So it's definitely worth choosing the right person to represent you.
We had a wonderful gentleman, John Wirtz, up in New Jersey, and he went to show us this home. The family was still home when we got there. The father had already moved. He was actually, I forget what line of work he was in. He wasn't military, but the family was moving. And so the mom is trying to set up the rest of the move because the dad was already moved and
Oh,
at his
yeah.
job. And she had stayed, and the kids, were wrapping up school and everything else. And her 15-year-old son was struggling with the move
Oh.
and was acting out. And, our real estate agent walked up. He says, should we come back? He was so gracious about it. And she says, no, come on in.
Uh-huh.
And she started apologizing because she hadn't gotten the house to where she wanted it. Uh, and her son was very much struggling.
Oh.
And she finally asked her son, can you please quit doing this? Just go upstairs for a little bit. And he pulled out his guitar and started jamming.
Oh, wow.
And watching John Wirtz, and this was, oh my gosh, this was our real estate agent in 2003. I still remember his name.
Uh-huh.
That tells you how much of a positive experience it was.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
he was immediately reassuring the mom, and just, it's great to have a soundtrack to hear, to show the
Yeah.
home. Your son's a fantastic player. And just, he made her comfortable and us comfortable. We bought the home. It was just a wonderful family to work with
Yeah.
and wonderful real estate agent to work with.
Makes a big difference. It does. It's an emotional process, and I think people need to remember that. Um, there's usually big reasons why people are moving. Some of them are good, some of them are not that good. So, gotta all keep that in mind. All right, we're going to move on now to what's coming up. And I want you to share the myriad of things that you do because you have so many things. I'm going to just jot them down. I want a list of everything you're doing because it's just hard to keep track. So are you still doing Dinner Detective?
I am still doing Dinner Detective. And so I'm actually doing the show this coming Saturday. And so I'll do Dinner Detective. I'm playing a detective this time. I'll go immediately from Dinner Detective. I got permission from my boss to leave the casting all call at the end a little bit early. We'll do the full show, but then I will immediately turn around and go to Mic Drop Mania. I'm a semifinalist at Mic Drop Madness.
Yes.
So I'll be on that show at 9:30, and then at the moment I'm still tending the rose garden down at Heritage Square.
Uh-huh.
And at the moment I am dusting off my hat from decades ago when I ran animal rescue. We
Oh.
have somebody abandoned a little kitten down at the square,
Uh-huh.
and Archie is not part. We have a community of cats there, so I do look after the cats down there. They all belong there. We have 10 of them that are in residence, and somebody abandoned two cats down there. And Archie is
Oh.
this little fuzzy black cat. He's called Archie because he arches his back to get petted,
Oh.
but he's 3 stories up the Lath Arboretum. And I've spent the last 3 days trying to get him down.
He's like
So
trapped up there?
he's got water up there. He's got food up there. We've called animal rescue. Animal rescue couldn't figure out how to get up there. So we're working on getting Archie off the Lath Arboretum at the
Oh,
moment.
poor little guy.
Yeah, it's just been crazy. Still hiking, still doing all of that,
Uh-huh.
still doing voice acting,
Yeah.
and oh my goodness, what else is
And you're
going on?
producing quite a few shows, right? Are you still
Oh yes,
doing all that? Yeah.
next show. I'm actually apprenticed to Tony Visick,
Mhm.
learning the business of comedy. I've been his apprentice for the last couple of years, and I'm now producing shows with him under the Tempe Comedy Concert Series at Tempe Center for the Arts.
Uh-huh.
So our next show is March Madness, which is 20 comics going up for a $300 prize. It's the People's Choice Award. We heard
People's
last year
Choice
from
Award.
we heard from Funniest Comic in the Valley last year that the audience wanted the ability to be able to choose one of the finalists.
Hmm.
So one night, March 29th, Tempe Center for the Arts at 7:30, we are going to be putting 20 comics up, $300 prize for the winner, and a guaranteed finalist spot in Funniest Comic in the Valley.
Oh, wow. That's the show that you're running out of the Awatuki
Yep,
um
Funniest
Cactus
Comic in the Valley
Jacks.
will kick. Yep, it'll kick off April 9th at Cactus Jacks in Awatuki.
Okay.
And then we also have the Clean Comedy Workout, which is a G-rated comedy mic at down at the Chill Room in Tempe, which
Yeah.
is a wonderful. It reminds me so much of El Charro Hipster because it's mom, dad, and two sons that run the Chill Room. It's a non-alcoholic venue. It's got wonderful meeting places. It basically is meant to be a place to reconnect with people. And he's bringing it as an art center to Tempe with music, poetry, and then comedy. We do our stand-up comedy. Next one's going to be April 18th.
April 18th.
And so, yep, April 18th, Thursday, April 18th at 7 o'clock, we'll be back at the Chill Room. And then June 7th is my next full production. First full production was Phoenix Arrives, which was all of our award-winning comics from all the comedy competition in Phoenix, and actually one of them from Tucson. And so that was my first full-up production. Second full-up production will be Top Brass, which is a veterans show. It's civilians are welcome to come, but we've got a lineup of military veteran comics who are going to be on stage. Sid Smith will be joining us. Josh Novi will be joining us. Matt Broom will be there. And we've got just a spectacular lineup going for that one.
Nice.
And that's going to be June 7th.
So you're a busy gal.
Yep. Graphics design work's still going on too. So I still do the graphics design.
It's just amazing thinking about that your counselor when you were exiting the military, thinking it was so hilarious that you could actually have a career in comedy, and look at you. I think it worked out pretty well.
Oh, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it's fun, and there's great people in this community, and I don't know, it's a cool experience if you get the chance to get involved with comedy, I think.
Now you've got the new show down at Jared's, and you've got
you're going to be on that. Why? Who You Calling Old? That's been pretty fun. All comedians over the age of 50, and that's been really fun. So we've had 2 shows of that so far, and then That's What She Said, the all-female comedy show that started in 2018, back in Chris Zucker's Comedy Off Main Street little comedy club in downtown Mesa. So, in fact, it's interesting because we started that because the female comedians were really marginalized in the Phoenix comedy community. They were really being treated poorly. And I look now at how many powerful females are producing their own shows, calling the shots. The landscape has changed a lot for, I think, the female comedians in this city. So I think that's really good. Good to see positive change.
You run a great show, and Jared's is just a great spot.
It's
an absolute great spot. And here's the other thing that a lot of people don't realize. You were the visionary behind the comic relief for Jared's.
Oh, right.
And to set up, for a business that's going, oh my gosh, am I going to make it through this, financial crisis? And you set up, that was what, 12 hours of comedy?
10 hours. Well, 40 comedians. Yeah.
Yep.
That was fun. And then I had COVID, so I didn't get to go. That was so lame.
And then, people wonder about how on one hand, we've got people who love comedy because you're bringing people in and helping businesses stay alive and creating a vibrant art scene. And then we also that was the day of the infamous bomb threat.
Yes, that was a crazy day. It was crazy.
That was just insanity. But, here's the thing. That supported the local community. Comedy there supported the local community. Jared's is still there. It's a beautiful thing.
It is. It really is. And yay for us for doing our little part to make it a little bit better. Well, this has been amazing. Can you believe we've been talking for almost an hour? It doesn't feel like it. It's because we never talk. We have to have coffee sometime or something and catch up. We don't have to always do it on a podcast. Oh, but it was great catching up with you. Thank you so much for doing this. And honestly, I would love to just sit down with you and just chill out and have some conversation, because you're a really, really cool person that I really enjoyed talking with and counting as a friend. So thanks for being here.
I look forward to it. I look forward to it. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast today.
You can catch Liz at the Dinner Detective, comedy shows all across the valley, or just hanging with the cats at the Phoenix Rose Garden.